Hey, beautiful friends. Welcome to day 5 of our 7 days of self-acceptance. How did you go with that eye-gazing exercise yesterday? Choosing to actively shift into a mentality of self-love or self-acceptance in that connection with your inner being. I'd love to hear if anything came up, or if you'd like to share, or if you'd like to take this work deeper, please feel free to reach out to me. I do one-on-one work. Now for today, for day 5, I'm going to mix it up a little bit and going to talk a little bit about nervous system stuff, and it's kind of how we go in the world, because I know that so often what we can do, our nervous system or anxiety, so we can feel low level or even acute anxiety when we feel like maybe we've done the wrong thing, when we've had an interaction or something, and we come away from it, or even during it, and we feel like we've perhaps done something or said something that somebody might have taken in the wrong way, somebody might have been upset by, maybe they didn't understand what you were trying to say, and we take that on. We take on all the responsibility for how somebody else has experienced that interaction. And yes, it's important to be authentic and kind in who you are. But it took me a long time to learn, and not learn mentally, but learn from an embodied process, from an embodied standpoint, not to be anxious and not to be hyperactivated in case somebody misunderstood me, And so I've kind of called, initially coming into today's session, I kind of called it a session about seeking approval. But, in reflection, it's less about seeking approval and more about allowing yourself to self-acceptance, to have a space of not knowing and not needing to control how somebody else has received you, which is whether or not somebody approves or not. And you know what I find when we let go of this? People don't care. People are fine, and if they're not fine, maybe they're not your people, or maybe a different conversation needs to be had. But to take ownership and feel safe in your embodiment and your acceptance of self means that you also allow other people to be responsible for the way they're experiencing and perceiving the world. We don't need to control the way a person's filter of perception allows them to experience the world. And we live in a world which is so full of offended people. And it's because we've lost this art to self-regulate, to this art of understanding that perhaps what somebody says isn't about me. And so this is kind of the flip side of that. What you share with a person, or whatever social interaction there might be, your sole responsibility is to be kind, authentic you. And, to be able to let that go out into the world, however it be received, is a huge liberation, a huge act of self-love and acceptance. So how do we do that? It's because it's easier said than done. The nervous system is patterned, it's imprinted, it's a thing of habit. And so we're using the concept of awareness again, but because this anxiety is usually a visceral feeling, it's something that comes in the body. It's like a tension and a tightness, or a fluttery feeling, or just that not feeling of safety. And trust me, I speak from experience and learning on this. So all of this stuff, I'm sharing this because I've come from a place of such deep self-rejection. And at the time, I did not know it. I could not have identified it or, put it into words in the way that I can now. But anxiety, I really knew. So how to work with this? and bring a greater sense of self-acceptance to that feeling of being of disapproval that you might experience when, you know. And I think Brene Brown had a really great word for it, and I can't remember it exactly, but it was, that's right, yeah. So she called it a vulnerability hangover. And it's this feeling of anxiety and fear and dread almost when you have been yourself. And it doesn't mean vulnerability like you've had to bare your soul. You know, sometimes our nervous system is has learned such inhibited patterning that simply by being happy, like I found that just being happy and enjoying an experience, I would walk away and I'd feel terribly terribly dysregulated, terribly uncomfortable by that, in that. And what we're going to do is we're relearning what's safe to experience. We're relearning that it's not, you know, we don't need to be anxious simply by feeling good, which is what it often boils down to. So when you do notice this happening, you know, maybe you walk away from a situation or a social event or something, and maybe you had a really good time, but then in the car driving home, you have this vulnerability hangover that maybe I said the wrong thing, or maybe you can put it into words. Maybe it's just an embodied feeling. And I invite you to notice that experience and to allow it. You know, often we'll go, oh, I'm just being silly, and push it aside. And as I mentioned in one of the earlier videos, when we push something aside, it gives it more power, but less visibility. So tune into what's the sensation that's coming up in my body. Sit with it. Don't judge it. Don't analyze it. Just allow yourself to be with it. And in that space, perhaps, so there's you know, to regulate the nervous system, there's a practice called havening, which you can do. So while you're tuning in with that sense of, you know, the embodied sense of anxiety, maybe it's butterflies, maybe there's tension in your chest, maybe your heart's pounding a little bit more, but to allow that feeling to breathe. So deepen your breath, follow the breath, bring your awareness to the breath without rejecting the feelings, and perhaps just gently holding yourself. This soft, nurturing, reassuring touch. And in this way, we can start to retrain ourselves. So by not rejecting the hyperactivation we might experience when we fear that we might not be getting the approval of others, or we fear, all sorts of different stories come up. You know, we all have different imprints that we've taken on over our lifetimes. But in dealing with the anxiety and the kind of that limiting nervous system response, we start by being present with it and by creating a sense of safety in our body, not by rejecting that feeling, but by accepting it. And in spite of that feeling, we can learn to regulate and to know that you might even choose to repeat those words from last week, you know, which you know, I'm doing my best. My best is enough. I am enough. It's safe for me to be seen. It's safe for me to be me. You know, and often that's what it is. It's safe for me to be me. And so in the self-acceptance journey and allowing ourselves to be who we are, so stopping, you know, shifting from self-rejection and inhibiting who we are, we really need to, we can't ignore the nervous system piece. And the nervous system piece has to be faced with awareness. And, you know, sometimes it might be uncomfortable, as anxiety can be, but it really is about, you know, through self-regulation, we build resilience and we can retrain that nervous system to realize that it's not unsafe to feel good. You know, I can be vulnerable, but I'm also my own greatest resource for safety. And so this is going a bit deeper than perhaps I intended for this little process, but I hope you're with me on this, and I hope it's serving you, and I would love to hear anything that you've got to share. So please leave a comment or reach out, or if any of this resonates, I'd love to hear. So looking forward to sharing. It'll be, I think, day 6 tomorrow. And yeah, be well.